in poor conditions to put Wigan within, and it was a real pressure kick, put Wigan within touching distance. It's really got you scratching your head thinking, well, if Smith can kick him like that normally, it's amazing he hasn't been kicking so far because Hardacre is so erratic.
I think Zach is quite a streaky kicker. I think when he gets in nick is dead good. There was the game that we played at home against Hull and against Cass, and I think he kicked well then. But yeah, it seems to be his kicking away from the DW is poor, but the thing is Hardacre's going to play every week, and Smith isn't going to be on the pitch all the time. And I think that's why you persist with your 65% goal kicker when you're winning games anyway, than go to your 85% kicker. But that
could be exactly the reason, Mark. Yeah. That's a very good point.
But I'd go along with that. But then we've got one of the best kickers in the business, who's kicked so many drop goals in his career, who suddenly has got a complete block about kicking drop goals. So even the best, like Mark Sny, can go to the wayside a bit. So I'm not ready to write off the goal kicking. I think the last tackle options is more an issue. I think I'm not the kick chase side. Yeah, that there was an element of. I just think Hull came into this game with a greater level of intensity and delivered on it than Wigan did.
Yeah, they did.
But there were a few attacking times where Wigan's short kicks just didn't quite make the mark, and some of that was from good Hull reactions. They'd kick a ball so it went off the path, or they'd get in the way of the kick just in time a few times. But yeah, that was a worry for me in this game from Wigan's point of view. Although Wigan did score in one of the only limited attacks that they actually had in the first half. They scored on that attack, but they didn't create very much when they had the extra man. Certainly not anything clear cut. Probably because they didn't get enough field position down the other end regularly enough because of the intensity of Hull FC.
Yeah, I thought Hull handled that situation well. I'm not sure Wigan tested. Maybe it could have been because of the conditions, but I'm not sure Wigan, in those situations, one hopes you'd sort of stretch them one way, stretch them the other way to try and find the hole.
Well, as soon as they went a man down, Bevan French should have been at fullback for that 10 minutes. Because that's how you stretch them. You put your fastest, most skillful player on the ball more often.
Yeah, exactly.
But, Wigan got that wrong, and I don't think it would have made a difference if they'd have got that call right necessarily, because Hull were just better, and they deserved the win.
They did.
There was a mention in there, a few sort of heat of the moment jokes which were quite funny, but also a more direct kind of mention about the motivation that the RFL and club gave to Hull FC. So shall we talk if we've got any views strong one way or another on the 8-match ban for Tony Clubb? Because last week, of course, we didn't have the final verdict or the write-up of the other side of events, because we'd only heard Andre Savelio's recollections of the events.
Yeah, and I mean, I read the write-up. Do you want to go first, Mark? Since this is obviously closer to your heart than it is to mine.
No, I mean,
are you sure?
One thing I would say is two sort of white blokes who've probably not had as much adversity as a lot of other people probably aren't the best qualified to comment on it. And I'm going to say most of the probably white blokes from West Yorkshire who think that it's just a bit of banter in the letters pages and that sort of thing probably aren't the most qualified people to comment on the circumstances or issue either. But we do this podcast and we'll comment on it.
I mean, I read the write up from the panel. I mean, I think the rule. I thought you guys described it very. It was Alan that was on with you last week. I think you described it really well on the show. The rules are very clear. You can't use someone's ethnicity or cultural heritage or whatever with pejorative terms around it. I mean, that's just it. I mean, it's really clear. It's clear in law and it's clear in the rules of how we deal with those things within the game. So I think once the panel had decided they believed Savelio's version of it, or that they didn't believe Club's version of the story, then it's relatively straightforward that they have to give him a significant ban for using the phrases that are actually in the charge, inappropriate language. Now, do I think 8 matches is appropriate? I think 8 matches is quite a lot. It's a big chunk of any league season. If I look back to, and I know it's quite a few years ago now, but the incident with Luis Suarez for Liverpool, who abused Patrice Evra.
Yeah, and I must get it out there. I'm very proud of my club for not getting any T-shirts out.
Yeah, absolutely. It was not a highlight of my time as a Liverpool fan, that's for sure. Suarez got 8 matches for that incident. So and that's in a 38 game season. So 8 matches in a 27 game season is a significant tariff. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think the problem for the rugby league and for the panel is, well, twofold really, and both have been pointed out quite extensively. One is it's not the most not the highest tariff that you can have for an offence in this class. So, as a lot of people pointed out, people have had longer bans for squeezing someone's testicles.
Yeah, but that player got that ban because he'd not very long in the past done the same offence.
It's irrelevant.
That shows an element of that person committing a serious offence and having no ability to prevent himself from committing that serious offence again. So, I think I think people jumping on that ban for George Flanagan need to get a grip of why that ban was so big.
Yeah, but I think the issue here is, having been categorised as it was, to give a penalty at the bottom end of the spectrum when it's racism, I think is a bit tin-eared. Yeah. So I think the actual ban itself, to me, is, I don't have a problem with 8 matches. I think the fact that it's in a category where it says 8 to 10 matches and it's racism, and not to give it 10 is a bit tin-eared politically. I think on top of that, then, in the statement, to say it was in the heat of the moment is, whether that's true or not, is again very tin-eared.
I agree. I think I was waiting to sort of understand the other version of how it went about, just because I wanted to know how get a picture of how the conversation went or escalated or what have you. And I don't think we were ever going to get that from just Andre Savelio's side, because what you got to remember is Andre Savelio spent 20 minutes stewing on that moment, wanting to spark him out rather than wanting to report it, which someone hopefully has had a conversation with him about, like, that not being the right way to have approached it, and the right way ultimately came out, but maybe not through the right motivations. I don't know, but so, I wanted to hear the other way it went around. It feels like the escalation of the conversation started from Savelio's end, which is kind of why the heat of the moment conversation has relevance to an extent. So I would say relevance to the extent that this is where we need to step down from the concepts of life bans or season bans or that sort of thing, and go back to a period ban that's going to be significant, rather than the other way around, rather than the sort of starting point, which I think is most of our starting points on racial abuse. One thing I think they've missed the point on, and that this concerns me more, and I feel like whilst I'm pleased Wigan took extra steps to give further punishment to Tony Clubb to show their seriousness of this, and actually the way they're going to approach the implication of those, basically finding him in his wages to use that money to make sure more goes back into education around this. That's good, and it's a worry for the whole education process of the panel and everything, and this is why we're not really qualified to speak on this properly. Whether or not we think Tony Clubb's a racist, like an overt racist, like an intentional racist, isn't relevant here. The concern is that his go-to in the heat of the moment gets quite quickly to something linked to racial or ethnic origin. Now, the way it's portrayed in Tony Clubb's version of events isn't in any way kind of a hate, spewy, bile-filled, vile, racist abuse. Okay, it isn't. And even kind of, I think Savelio would realise it wasn't meant in a vile, abusive, vitriolic, racist way. Okay, but that's irrelevant, because what it shows is the education piece that these players have already had doesn't address the problem of unconscious racism, subconscious bias, those sort of issues that are the things we need to address to stop any sort of concepts of systematic discrimination, be it against people of different ethnicities, people of different economic backgrounds, people of different genders or different sexual identities or what have you. And the whole way it's been handled in the way it's been talked about since, I think, has ignored those pieces. So the biggest positive that's going to come from this, hopefully, is that a better education piece comes out of it. And if Wigan can deliver that to their players and the RFL can help that get delivered to all the players, including the players who might be on the receiving end who think we just do schoolyard justice rather than actually get this out into the open, make people understand what the problem is, so then we can deal with it. So I think 8 games is a significant ban. I kind of was hoping for a little bit more, maybe in the range of, say, a 3-month ban or something like that. I'm pleased Wigan have taken an extra step beyond what the panel handed out. I do think it's fair for Wigan to kind of get behind their player, but at the same time they have to acknowledge that just because Tony Clubb isn't a racist, it doesn't mean that this isn't a racially motivated insult that needed to be worked on.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think Wigan have handled it very well. I think just returning very briefly to and summarising where I am, I think the only thing that disappoints, I think the ban's fair. I think the only thing that disappoints me is the way in which the Rugby League released the information around the charging, etc., has allowed people to portray this as not being dealt with very well by the RFL. And I think that's a shame in the current circumstances. And they ought to have been more savvy about how this would look, given how much store they've placed on taking the knee and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, but rugby league communities took a stance against taking the knee last year, quite vocally. Not en masse, but the angry, noisy minority were quite vocal about it, about how it shouldn't happen. And also then alongside that there was people with different religious themes that came into it, and a lot of the Polynesian players actually played into that religious theme as well. So it wasn't just the angry mob. So I stepped back a little bit from that, because there was lots of people who didn't see it as the right thing to be doing. And I think, but what the Rugby League have done with the Tackle It campaign, I think that's where we're talking about, isn't it, really, rather than taking the knee or Black Lives Matter or anything like that.
Sorry, that's what I meant. I think that we've set a lot of store by the Tackle It campaign, and one